When it comes to learning web development, Python might not be the first language that comes to mind. But rest assured, Python has two powerful frameworks that often stand out in web development. That's right, Flask and Django. In today's episode, I aim to provide you guys a comprehensive comparison between Flask and Django, aiding aspiring devs in choosing the right framework which aligns with their learning objectives and goals. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of PyPod Chronicles. Welcome to PyPod Chronicles, a series that brings our tech blog to life in a whole new way. Covering an array of topics surrounding Python and tech, from programming tips, best practices, and so much more. Let's get immersed in Python with the Nerd Nook on the go. Before I dive into today's episode, guys, you can get my handcrafted Python and Git starter pack absolutely free. It's the first link in the description below, and it's the guide that I give all my students on their first day of class to help them through their programming journey. And guys, that link in the description has so many other free resources for you guys to help you learn Python better. Head on down there and pick up your copy today. While both Flask and Django enable us as developers to build robust web applications, they differ significantly in their approach and their functionalities. Understanding their differences can be crucial, especially for beginners wanting to embark on their web development journey. But it's also super overwhelming at which one to start learning because, as humans, we don't often want to make the wrong choice, right? So we start learning one and we're like, well, I'm going to try the other one. But you should stick with one, at least for the first few months, or let's say a month. Now let's understand and get an overview of both of these frameworks. The first one, Flask, is known for its simplicity and minimalism. It's a micro framework which allows us devs to create web apps quickly and relatively easily. It offers a lot of fundamental tools necessary for web development, but it doesn't give you any restrictions on the structure or components of your application. And it's a micro framework because you can really just use Python with it. If you want to import other functionalities, you can also do that as well. Now, Django, on the other hand, is a high-level Python framework, and it emphasizes the concept of batteries included. And really what that means is it provides comprehensive features like template engines and admin panels, and this allows us to build rapidly expanding web applications. And this is suited for much larger applications. So Instagram, for example, was actually built with Django, right? And look where Instagram is now. It's huge. Okay, so if you're just learning to create your own ideas and bring them to life, I recommend starting with Flask, guys, okay? Because inevitably you're going to run into it in your Python journey, and Flask is actually used to build other frameworks in Python. So for example, in next week's episode, I'm going to talk about Plotly, which is a library for data visualization in Python. And Plotly was built on Flask. So if you understand Flask, picking up other frameworks is going to be so much easier. Flask's minimalistic design and straightforward architecture makes it relatively easy for beginners to pick up and grasp its fundamentals. It allows devs to understand the basic concepts and start building simple web apps quickly. I can import Flask and I can create an app object. All I need to do is create a root and then run my app. Now, Django's comprehensive feature sets beats Flask out of the water, that's for sure. But learning Django often requires a deeper understanding of its components, which can pose a steeper learning curve, especially for beginners. If you've worked with frameworks like React.js, right, in there they have components. Or even just coming from Flask, right? This setup will come across as more familiar and easier to grasp. So if you already know React or Flask, hop into Django. That's cool, that's fine. If you don't know either of those, I recommend starting with Flask. The setup procedure is much longer when it comes to Django to get an initial app up and going. Flask offers developers the freedom to customize every aspect of their web application. This approach gives you greater flexibility in choosing the components and tools required. This makes it a great choice for a customized solution. And this is also a great choice for those wanting to build MVPs. right? So I love PyQt, which is a framework for building desktop applications in Python. And another thing that I've pulled into my portfolio is Flask. So when I have an idea, I can make one app for my desktop, and that same app I can make on a website. So I could use Flask for that. So it allows me to take my initial idea, and I can spin up a desktop app, a mobile app, a website in a really short amount of time. Now, Django's structure and its predefined components might restrict the level of customization. While its structure is amazing for complex projects, it can also limit the extent of customization for those seeking more tailored solutions. This, of course, is a trade-off, as Django could be more secure and better for multi-page web applications. Guys, if you're into any of this, or maybe you just need a refresh on your skills, in the link in the description you can find some of my courses that I've made for you guys. Alright, so head on down there and check those out. Now, next up is our talk about scalability and performance. Flask's lightweight architecture and flexibility, it gives smaller applications the edge. This, as said earlier, makes it great for MVPs and to see your ideas come to life faster. But as the application becomes more complex, Flask might require some additional configurations and optimizations to make sure you can scale smoothly and increase your performance. If you're a beginner, then Flask is the right path for you now. This will make Django easier to pick up in the future. But the scalability with Django, well, Django's designed to handle complex and heavy-duty apps. This makes it much better in scalability and performance. Its built-in features are going to make it so much easier for you. So think of a larger multi-page web application. I want you to think of Django. Let's talk about some application scenarios. Okay, so I'll give you two. I'll give you one with Flask and I'll give you one with Django. So the Flask's simplicity and the flexibility that gives you, right, it makes it a great choice for building small to medium-sized web applications or prototypes. Its suitability for projects requiring customized solutions has gained a lot of popularity with startups as well as small-scale ventures. That's why I believe in project-based learning, and therefore Flask is a great option to get started hitting the ground running. Now for Django's all-inclusive nature and built-in features, this makes it a preferred option for large-scale, complex web applications. This could be content management system, a social network, or data-driven websites. We could compare ecosystems as well as plugins, because Flask, it has an extensive range of plugins and extensions. This allows you to create a super basic app, or you can really tailor this and customize this just using those plugins. But Django has a rich ecosystem. Its selection of plugins and packages, it's not as extensive, but it's pretty good for most of the things that you need. Now, which framework should you choose for learning? This is the ultimate question, but this also depends on your individual goals and project requirements. For those of you aiming to grasp the fundamentals of web development quickly and prefer a lightweight framework with customization capabilities, then Flask is a great starting point. I really encourage this for everyone to get into. This will help solidify your overall understanding, making Django easier to pick up down the road. Those of you aspiring to jump into the deep end of building complex and feature-rich applications, you may find that Django's comprehensive structure is a bit more suitable for where you're at in your learning journey. You may find Django's comprehensive structure more suitable for where you're at right now. Now, my final verdict, well, it's not to say the least, but both Flask and Django offer unique advantages and cater to different requirements. While Flask emphasizes simplicity and flexibility, Django prioritizes structure and comprehensive functionalities. For beginners aiming to grasp the basics of web development, Flask. For those of you interested in exploring the complex web apps, Django. But don't overwhelm yourself. That's what I tell my students. You don't need to go from 0 to 100 in a month. That's not going to happen. And if it does, you're not going to retain most of that information. Baby steps. I promise just by learning Flask, you'll be able to pick up new tips and tricks that'll make your transition into other frameworks so much easier. Now let me address a few popular questions I get asked, or if you just zoned out for this episode. Is Flask easier to learn than Django for beginners? Yes, generally speaking. It's easier to learn due to its minimalistic design and straightforward architecture. Okay, Django does have a steeper learning curve. Can you use Django to build small-scale apps, or is that just for Flask? Now, Django's renowned for its capabilities of large-scale apps, but that doesn't mean it's not incredibly effective for building small-scale applications. However, due to its comprehensive nature, if you're looking to build a smaller app, you might as well stick with Flask if you don't already know Django. And some key factors you can consider when choosing between these two: your project's scale and how complex it is, the level of customization that you need, and how familiar are you with Python. All right. And then the size of your project does have an impact on your choice. Smaller, Flask. Just think of that, right? A flask. You can put a flask in your pocket, carry some whiskey, vodka, whatever you drink. Okay? A flask is small. It's lightweight. It's for smaller days out. On the other hand, Django is more complex. Both of these communities for Flask and Django will help you out, okay? But Flask's community is generally known for its helpful tutorials and guides. So it does have really strong documentation. Now, Django has a great community. It's just a bit more not broken down, if I can say that. Okay, so interpret it with your own words. You might have to find more tutorials to help you. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap up this episode. Remember, guys, if you want my free handcrafted Python and Get Starter Pack, it's the first link in the description below, as well as the courses that I have available to you. I don't have a sponsorship yet for anything that I'm creating. I am my own sponsor, alright? So by heading down, getting a free copy, that helps me. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit the like button, restack this. That helps me grow and reach more students around the world. Well, that's all for today's episode of PyPod Chronicles, and I hope you got a better insight at which framework is better for learning as well as beginners. Is it Flask or Django? I'll let you be the final judge of that. Until next time, guys, I will see you in the next episode of PyPod Chronicles.